Hello everyone, welcome back. In this tutorial, let's discuss how we can apply the CSS to a specific HTML element, like what are the ways. Okay, there are three different ways to apply the CSS for a HTML element. Okay, first one is using a class. Okay, and using a class, if you create a class, it can be reused across different HTML pages. And we can create once and use it as many times as possible. Okay, this is the most recommended way. And the second one is using an ID. ID is specific to a specific HTML element, and it is we are narrowing down this particular CSS scope to a specific HTML element only. Wherever we use this ID, it will be applied. Third one is inline style. Inline styles can be just applied to that specific element where you use that inline style, but this is not recommended. Okay, and even we can directly apply the CSS to direct HTML elements itself instead of using any class or ID, using like a div tag or span tag and all. Let's look at all these four in this video and write the CSS and understand. Okay, now I have a plain CSS folder. I have a main CSS and a main HTML. So I'm starting with a plain HTML file. Okay, this is a plain HTML file. I'll add a title. To HTML element. Okay, it's in this div. Let's apply the CSS for this. Okay, let me just open this in live server. Okay, now you can see the content. Okay, the first one will start with directly applying the CSS to the HTML tag. So this is the tag, and I'll say height of 200 pixel, width of 200 pixel. Now you don't see because there is no background. Okay, now you can see. I'll say yellow green. Oh, okay. Now it is not applied because I didn't import the CSS. Okay, let me import it. Link rel style sheet hrefs main.css. This is how you can import the CSS. Now you see the difference. Okay, now I directly apply to the HTML element itself without using any class or ID or anything. Okay, this is one way to apply the CSS to directly to the HTML element. Now you can say span tag. Okay, even let's apply the CSS to span tag as well. So to directly apply the CSS to tags, we can simply use the tag name and apply. Now I want to color this text to red. Okay, see, now master's tutorial it is converted to red. Okay, now I used a tag directly. Okay, you can directly use the tag. This is one way to apply the CSS, and this will be applied to any framework, whether it is a Angular framework or React framework or Vue.js framework. For any framework, the same CSS ways that we can apply. Okay, now let's go for the second way. So instead of directly applying the CSS here, instead I want to use a class. Okay, I'll say it is heading. Okay, instead of div, since it is a class, we need to add a dot and the name. Okay, now the same content is applied. Now let's change this to different color just to see it properly. I'll say aqua. Now you see, now the CSS is applied using the class, this one, and if you remove this class it won't work, it won't apply anything. See, so now the CSS is applied. For this one CSS is applied through the class, and for this one applied through the direct HTML tag. Now here also we'll say color CSS. Instead of span tag, since it is a class, I use a dot. Now you can see, now let's change it to green color. Now you see the difference. And also we'll just increase the font size. Go for extra large. Okay, now you see, apply the same here. So this is how you can apply the CSS using a class. Now let's change it to ID. If you want to apply the CSS using ID, you need to remove this dot and set this hash. Okay, if you use hash, it is ID. If you use dot, it is using class. If you don't use anything, it should be an actual HTML element, a tag name, but heading is not a tag name. Okay, now if you see, now the same content is applied. Let's change this to black. Okay, since content is in black color, now you cannot see it. Let's change the content to white. Okay, let me change it to white. Okay, so this is how you can apply the CSS using ID. Okay, now let me change this to ID. Okay, if I want to use this ID, I need to change this to ID. So now it is applied again. So this is how you can apply the CSS using ID. Okay, ID scope is minimal, but the class scope is more, and better to use as many classes as possible instead of ID. Okay, and the last one is inline CSS. Okay, this is not at all recommended. To write inline CSS, you need to apply the CSS here. Height 200 pixel, width 200 pixel, background color yellow green. Okay, this is how you can apply inline CSS. Okay, that means you are directly writing the CSS here itself, and you don't need this import if you are writing the CSS inline. But this is not at all recommended for real-time production applications. You should always go for the tag based, HTML tag based, which is of div, or the class name based on the class name with a dot here, or you can go with the ID. But inline styles are not at all recommended for production application. Okay, these are the ways to apply the CSS for HTML elements. Okay, this is not just for plain CSS. This is for any framework like Angular, React, or Vue.js or Next.js. For any framework, this is the way you can apply the CSS. Thank you. See you in the next video.